The alarm had been screaming for 3 minutes before Roy Palmer even heard it. He had his headphones on, listening to old Earth Country music while he scrubbed the floor panels in Section 7D. When he finally noticed the flashing red lights, he pulled out one earbud and sighed. Another emergency drill, probably. They had those twice a week on the Crimson Dawn. But then Highkeeper Vornath came skittering around the corner, all 6 of his arms waving in panic. The insectoid alien never ran. Never. In the 8 months Roy had worked on this ship, he had never seen Vornath move faster than a dignified walk. Have you seen them? Have they come through here? Vornath's translator made his voice sound like grinding metal. Seen what? Roy asked, setting down his mop. The hatchlings. The royal hatchlings. They have escaped again. Roy blinked. He had heard about the dragon babies, of course. Everyone on the ship had heard about them. 5 royal Draconis hatchlings, each one destined to rule an entire star system someday. They lived in the fancy nursery on the upper decks, the place with the crystal chambers and the automated everything. Roy had never been up there. Janitors did not go to the royal levels unless something broke. No, sir. Haven't seen any baby dragons down here, Roy said. Want me to help look? Vornath made a clicking sound that the translator did not bother to interpret. He spun around and skittered back the way he came, shouting orders into his communication device. Roy shrugged and went back to mopping. The maintenance closet area was not exactly exciting, but it was quiet. He liked quiet. After losing his farm back on Meadowland and taking this job to pay off his debts, quiet was about all he wanted. During his break, he could sit in the storage room, eat his sandwich, and pretend he was back home for a little while. 2 hours later, his shift ended. Roy stored his cleaning supplies, grabbed his lunchbox, and headed to the storage room where he always took his breaks. It was technically not allowed, but nobody else ever came down here at night. He opened the door and froze. 5 small dragons were curled up on his jacket. They were beautiful, Roy had to admit. Each one was about the size of a house cat, with scales that shimmered in colors he did not have names for. One was deep red, another looked like liquid gold, and a third had patches of purple and green. The smallest one, tucked in the middle, had silver-white scales that seemed to glow slightly. They were sound asleep. Roy stood very still. He did not know much about aliens, but he knew enough not to startle sleeping animals, even baby animals that would someday be bigger than buildings. Well, he whispered, I guess I know where you went. The smallest one opened one eye. It looked at Roy for a long moment, then made a soft chirping sound. The others started to wake up, stretching like cats. The red one yawned, showing rows of tiny, sharp teeth. Roy slowly sat down on the floor, keeping his movements calm and gentle. Back on the farm, he had raised chickens, goats, and once helped his neighbor with lambing season. Baby animals were baby animals, he figured. They needed to feel safe. You guys shouldn't be down here, he said quietly. Bet there are a lot of fancy people looking for you. The golden one tilted its head, listening. Roy reached into his lunchbox and pulled out his apple. He had already eaten his sandwich, but he always saved the apple for last. He cut a slice with his pocket knife and held it out. The smallest dragon crept forward, sniffed the apple slice, then ate it from his hand. The others followed, gathering around him. Soon all 5 were eating apple slices, making soft humming sounds. Guess you were hungry, Roy said. Don't they feed you up there? He knew they did. He had heard the staff talking about the expensive synthetic foods they prepared, perfectly balanced for growing Draconis. But maybe fancy food did not taste as good as a simple apple. When the apple was gone, the dragons did not leave. Instead, they climbed into his lap, curling around each other and against his legs. The red one rested its head on his knee. The smallest one pressed against his chest. Roy did not know what to do, so he did what he used to do with the baby goats back home. He talked to them soft and low. He told them about Earth, about his farm, about how the wheat looked when the wind blew through it. He hummed old songs his mother used to sing. Within minutes, all 5 dragons were asleep again. That was how the security team found them an hour later. Vornath burst through the door with 4 guards, all of them armed with nets and tranquilizers. They stopped when they saw Roy sitting on the floor covered in sleeping dragons. Still humming. Do not move, Vornath whispered, as if Roy had planned to juggle the baby dragons or something. Was not planning to. Roy whispered back. It took 20 minutes to carefully move each hatchling. They whimpered when they were taken from Roy, making distressed sounds that hurt to hear. The guards carried them like they were made of glass, rushing back toward the upper decks. Vornath turned to Roy, all 6 arms crossed. "You will report to my office tomorrow morning. There will be questions." "Yes, sir," Roy said. After they left, Roy sat alone in the storage room. His jacket smelled like cinnamon and something he could not name. He picked it up, shook it out, and put it on. Tomorrow he would probably be in trouble. But tonight, he had held 5 baby dragons and they had trusted him enough to sleep. Back on his farm, that would have been called a good day. The questioning room had too many lights. Roy sat in a chair that was designed for someone with a different body shape, trying not to fidget while 3 scientists stared at him like he was a puzzle they could not solve. This had been going on for 4 days now. "Explain again what you did to attract them," the Valorian scientist said. She had blue skin and eyes that did not blink. "I did not do anything," Roy said for what felt like the 100th time. "I was just sitting there." "Humans must produce some pheromone we have not detected," another scientist muttered, tapping notes into a device. "Run another chemical scan." They had already scanned him 6 times. They had scanned his clothes, his lunchbox, his cleaning supplies, even his toothbrush. They found nothing unusual. Roy was just human and not even an interesting human. He was 47 years old, had bad knees from years of farm work, and his most exciting feature was a scar on his left hand from a farming accident when he was 12. The hatchlings had escaped twice more since that first night. Both times they were found in the same place, curled up around Roy during his break. The second time he had been reading a maintenance manual. The third time he had been eating dinner. They just appeared, settled into his lap, and fell asleep. "Perhaps we should examine his quarters," the third scientist suggested. "I share quarters with 3 other janitors," Roy said. Pretty sure they would have mentioned if dragons kept showing up. The scientists did not appreciate his humor. They never did. On the 5th day, they brought in physician Rella. She was a Quillan, with tentacles instead of arms and a gentle way of speaking that made Roy feel less like a lab experiment. "Roy Palmer," she said, settling across from him. "May I ask you some questions that are not about chemicals or scans?" "Sure," Roy said, grateful for the change. "Tell me about your home," so Roy did. He told her about his farm on Meadowland, about waking up before dawn to feed the chickens. He told her about the baby goats every spring, how they would jump on everything and follow him around. He told her about sitting in the barn during thunderstorms, keeping the animals calm with his voice and his presence. Rella listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "The hatchlings are not eating properly in the nursery," she said finally. "Their stress hormones are elevated. They barely sleep. But when they are with you, every vital sign improves. Maybe they do not like the nursery," Roy said. "It is state-of-the-art. Temperature-controlled, automated feeding systems, perfectly balanced environment. Maybe that is the problem." Rella's tentacles curled in what might have been curiosity. "Explain." Roy thought about how to put it into words. "When I had baby chicks, I could have used heat lamps and automatic feeders. Would have been easier. But they did better when I checked on them myself, talked to them, let them know someone cared. Living things need more than perfect conditions. They need to feel safe. The nursery is the safest place on the ship, safe from danger maybe. But is it safe from loneliness?" That evening, Roy was escorted to the observation room above the nursery. He could see the 5 hatchlings in their crystal chambers, pacing and restless. The red one kept trying to climb the walls. The smallest one sat in a corner, not moving at all. "Watch," Rella said. They had set up cameras in Roy's usual break spot. On the screen, Roy watched himself from earlier that day, sitting down with his dinner. Within 5 minutes, the hatchlings appeared, having escaped their chambers again. Security had no idea how they kept doing it. On screen, Roy looked up from his food and smiled. "Back again? You are going to get me fired." The hatchlings crowded around him. He shared his bread with them, breaking it into small pieces. He talked to them about his day, about a stuck ventilation panel and how he had to climb inside to fix it. Boring stuff, normal stuff. "He's not doing anything special," one of the observing scientists said, frustrated. But Rella pointed at the vital signs display. "Look at their heart rates. Stress hormones dropping by 40%. Brain activity shows deep rest patterns, and from what? Listening to maintenance stories?" "From being heard," Rella said softly. from feeling that someone notices they exist. On screen, the smallest hatchling crawled into Roy's lap. He stroked its scales gently like he would pet a cat. The dragon made a purring sound. The automated systems provide perfect care, Rella continued, but they cannot provide presence. They cannot provide warmth, not the kind that matters. The hatchlings are not bonding with their environment because there is no one to bond with. The staff is with them constantly, a scientist protested. The staff monitors them. Roy Palmer sits with them. The room fell silent as they watched the screen. All 5 hatchlings were now sleeping peacefully while Roy ate his dinner one-handed, the other hand resting on the red dragon's back. Highkeeper Vornath entered the observation room, his mandibles clicking in agitation. This is the 7th escape. We cannot keep disrupting the human's schedule. The other workers are complaining. Then perhaps, Rella said carefully, we should change our approach. You cannot be suggesting what I think you are suggesting. The hatchlings have chosen their caretaker. He is a janitor. He is what they need. Vornath's 6 arms waved in distress. The council will never approve a human caring for royal offspring. It is unthinkable. Then we must help them think differently, Rella said, because if we do not, these hatchlings will not survive. In his small shared quarters, Roy had no idea his life was about to change. Roy did not recognize the room they brought him to. It had windows overlooking actual stars, real furniture instead of the cheap folding stuff in the crew quarters, and a carpet that his boots felt guilty walking on. He wondered if he should take them off. Sit, please, Vornath said, gesturing to a chair that actually looked comfortable. Roy sat. Physician Rella was there too, along with 2 other aliens he did not recognize. They all looked serious. Roy figured this was where they fired him for being too interesting to dragon babies. Roy Palmer, one of the new aliens, began. She had golden feathers and a voice like wind chimes. I am Council Representative Mira. We have a proposal for you. Okay, Roy said, because what else could he say? The hatchlings are refusing to eat. Their health is declining. Standard care protocols are failing. Mira folded her feathered hands. You are the only being they respond to positively. I did not mean to cause problems. You have not caused problems. You have revealed them. Mira glanced at Vornath, who looked like he had swallowed something sour. We would like to offer you a position as auxiliary caretaker for the royal hatchlings. Roy stared at her. I clean floors. We are aware of your current assignment. I do not know anything about dragons. You know something we apparently do not. Rella said gently. You know how to make them feel safe. That is not a skill. That is just being decent. Nevertheless, Mira continued, we are prepared to offer you a substantial increase in salary, private quarters near the nursery, and full caretaker status. Roy thought about his debts back home, thought about his sister who was struggling to keep the family land, thought about those 5 little dragons who just wanted someone to notice them. Then he thought about all the protocols and rules that came with a job like this. I want to keep doing some janitorial work, he said. Everyone blinked at him. Why? Vornath asked, genuinely confused. Because I like it. It is simple. I understand it. And it gives me time to think. Roy leaned forward. If I take this job, I do not want to become someone I am not. I am not fancy. I am not educated in alien royalty. I am just a guy who is decent with animals. If that is not good enough, then you should find someone else. Mira and Rella exchanged glances. Some silent conversation happened that Roy was not part of. Finally, Mira nodded. Very well. You may maintain a partial janitorial schedule if you wish. Do we have an agreement? Can I think about it? The hatchlings have not eaten in 3 days, Roy Palmer. That decided it. Okay, I will try. But if it does not work, you have to promise you will not blame them. Agreed. They moved him that same day. His new quarters had a bedroom, a sitting area, and a bathroom that did not require sharing with 3 other people. Roy felt overwhelmed by all the space. He put his few belongings in the corner and sat on the bed, feeling lost. A door he had not noticed opened. Highkeeper Vornath came through, his mandibles tight with displeasure. These are the protocols, Vornath said, thrusting a data pad at Roy. Feeding schedules, temperature requirements, growth monitoring, social development guidelines. You will memorize all of it. Roy looked at the pad. There were hundreds of pages. Charts and graphs and complicated words he did not understand. Right, he said. I will return in 3 days to test your knowledge, Vornath. left without waiting for a response. Roy spent that evening trying to read the protocols. By page 30, his head hurt. By page 60, he was falling asleep. None of it made sense to him. It was all about nutrient ratios and developmental windows and proper social hierarchy establishment. The next morning, they brought the hatchlings to his quarters. All 5 of them rushed to Roy the moment they saw him, chirping and climbing over each other. They had grown a little bigger in the days since he had seen them. The smallest one was now the size of a large cat instead of a house cat. "Hello," Roy said, sitting on the floor so they could reach him. "Heard you are not eating. That true?" The red one butted its head against his chest. The golden one curled around his legs. They made sounds that Roy's brain translated as relief and happiness, though he did not know how he knew that. An attendant wheeled in containers of the special synthetic food. It was bright blue and smelled like chemicals. "Would you eat this?" Roy asked the attendant. "I'm not a Draconis hatchling, sir." "Neither am I, but I know what real food looks like." Roy thought about the protocols he was supposed to follow. Feeding times, portion sizes, all of it carefully calculated. Then he thought about the baby goats back home. How they ate when they were hungry, not when a schedule said they should be. He looked at the hatchlings. "You guys want to help me make lunch?" The attendant looked horrified. "Sir, you cannot feed them unauthorized food." "Are they allergic to anything?" "Well, no, but the protocols, I will take responsibility." Roy went to the small kitchen in his quarters. He had some vegetables, some bread, some cheese. Simple stuff. He cut everything into small pieces and put them on a plate. The hatchlings watched with interest. He ate a piece first, showing them it was safe. Then he offered some to the smallest one. It sniffed, then ate. The others followed. Within minutes, they had devoured everything on the plate and were looking for more. "Guess you were just hungry for real food," Roy said. The attendant stood frozen in the doorway, probably calculating how many protocols had just been violated. 3 months had changed everything and nothing. The hatchlings were now the size of large dogs, their scales brighter, their wings starting to develop properly. They followed Roy everywhere, even when he did his janitorial work in the lower decks. The crew had gotten used to seeing a human janitor trailed by 5 baby dragons. Roy had given them names, though only in his head. He never said them out loud because it felt too personal, too much like claiming something that was not his to claim. But he thought of them as Red, Shimmer, Patch, Goldie, and Runt. Runt was his secret favorite, though he would never admit it. The smallest of the 5 with silver scales that caught the light. Runt stayed closest to Roy, always wanting to be picked up even though the little dragon was getting too big for that. High Keeper Vornath had stopped arguing with Roy's methods after the first month. Mostly because every health metric showed the hatchlings were thriving. They ate well, slept well, and were developing faster than expected. The fact that Roy ignored half the protocols seemed irrelevant when the results were this good. But today, Vornath looked worried. "There is a problem," he said, finding Roy in the maintenance bay where he was teaching the hatchlings about air filtration systems. "What kind of problem?" "The Imperial family wishes to inspect the hatchlings. They arrive in 2 days." Roy did not see why this was his problem. "Okay, I will make sure they are clean. You do not understand. There will be formal presentations. The hatchlings must demonstrate proper royal behavior. They must show respect to authority, maintain dignified distance, and respond to traditional commands." Roy looked at the 5 dragons who were currently playing tug-of-war with his work glove. Shimmer had it in her teeth, Patch was pulling from the other end, and Red was trying to steal it from both of them. "They are babies," Roy said. "They are royal heirs. They are baby royal heirs." Vornath's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This inspection is critical. If the Imperial family deems them unfit, it could cause political catastrophe. You must train them properly. Train them to do what? To act like royalty?" Roy had no idea how to do that. He knew how to teach a dog to sit, how to gentle a nervous goat, how to keep chickens from pecking each other. He did not know how to make dragons act fancy. They tried anyway. For the next 2 days, various staff members attempted to teach the hatchlings proper behavior. They were supposed to stand still during inspections. They were supposed to lower their heads to show respect. They were supposed to respond to commands in Old Draconis, a language Roy could not even pronounce. The hatchlings hated every minute of it. They became stressed and snappish. Runt refused to eat. Red growled at everyone except Roy. On the morning of the inspection, Roy was informed he would not be present. "Why not?" he asked. It would be inappropriate, Bornath said, not meeting his eyes. You are staff, not family. Roy felt something cold settle in his stomach, but he nodded. Okay. They dressed the hatchlings in ceremonial bands around their necks. The dragons kept trying to scratch them off. Staff members positioned them in the formal greeting chamber, a huge room with marble floors and golden pillars. Roy watched from a monitoring room, feeling useless. The Imperial family arrived in a ship that was more art than vessel. Lady Cassera, mother to one of the Imperial heirs, swept into the greeting chamber with an entourage of advisors and guards. She was enormous, an adult draconis who had to fold her wings to fit through the doorway. The hatchlings were supposed to bow. Instead, they huddled together, making distressed sounds. Present yourselves, Vornath commanded in Old Draconis. The hatchlings did not move. Red hissed. Patch tried to back away. Runt started making a high-pitched whining sound that made Roy's chest hurt. Lady Cassera observed this with an unreadable expression. Are they ill? No, my lady. They are merely adjusting to formal protocol. They appear terrified. We have been training them. Red suddenly bolted, just took off running out of the chamber and down the corridor. The others followed immediately, scattering the guards who tried to stop them. Alarms went off. Staff scrambled. Roy was already moving before anyone could stop him. He knew where they would go. He found all 5 of them in the maintenance closet where they had first met him months ago. They were crammed into the small space, piled on top of each other, shaking. Roy sat down on the floor. Hey, it is okay. Come here. They swarmed him, all trying to fit in his lap at once, even though they were too big for that now. Runt pressed against his chest, trembling. Roy hugged them as best he could, humming softly. I know. Scary day. Lot of strangers and rules that do not make sense. That was how Lady Cassara found them, following the tracker signals from the ceremonial bands. She had to duck to fit through the maintenance closet door. Her eyes, ancient and intelligent, took in the scene. So, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle, you are the human. Yes, ma'am. I am sorry about the inspection. I tried to teach them, but you taught them to trust instead. She moved closer, slowly, until she could see the hatchlings clearly. They watched her warily but did not run. When I was a hatchling thousands of years ago, we had guardians. Not caretakers, guardians. Beings who stayed with us, protected us, made us feel safe while we learned to be strong. I did not know that, ma'am. We stopped the practice, decided it was more efficient to use automated systems and trained staff. She reached out one enormous claw and gently touched Runt's head. The little dragon did not pull away. But efficiency is not the same as wisdom. No, ma'am. Lady Cassara looked at Roy for a long moment. Do you understand what you have done, human? These 5 will remember you forever. When they rule their sectors, when they make decisions that affect billions, they will remember the one who sat with them in maintenance closets and made them feel safe. Roy had not thought about it that way. I just wanted them to be okay. That, Lady Cassara said, is exactly why you are the right choice. She straightened, wings rustling. The inspection is concluded. The hatchlings are developing appropriately. If unconventionally, their guardian may continue his work. After she left, Roy sat with the 5 dragons for a while longer, letting them calm down. That was not so bad, he said. She seemed nice. Runt made a small chirping sound and closed his eyes, finally relaxed. 6 months felt like 6 minutes and 6 years at the same time. The hatchlings were now the size of ponies, which meant Roy's small quarters were not working anymore. They had moved to the juvenile wing, a section of the ship designed for growing draconis. Roy had quarters connected to theirs by a wide passage, though the hatchlings spent most of their time in his rooms instead of their own. They could talk to him now, sort of. Not with words, but with feelings and images that appeared in his head. It gave Roy constant headaches, but he was getting better at understanding them. Red wanted to know why the ship had so many rules. Shimmer wanted to know how everything worked, always asking questions about engines and navigation. Patch was quieter, but Roy could feel the little dragon thinking, planning, watching everything. Goldie felt everyone's emotions and tried to make peace when the others argued. And Runt just wanted to stay close to Roy, always. Today they had their first formal education session. The Imperial tutor, a being named Scholar Thorn who looked like a floating crystal, arrived precisely on time. Young ones, Thorn began, his voice echoing like bells. Today we begin your study of galactic governance. You will learn about trade agreements, territorial disputes, and diplomatic protocols. The hatchlings sat in a row, trying to look attentive. Roy sat in the back, mending his work jacket because the sleeve had torn yesterday. Thorn talked for an hour about tariff structures and trade route monopolies. The hatchlings' attention wandered after 10 minutes. Red started fidgeting. Shimmer stared at the ceiling. Patch was clearly not listening. Goldie looked sad. Runt turned around to look at Roy every few minutes. Young ones, pay attention, Thorn said. This is crucial knowledge. Why? Shimmer asked. The word appeared in everyone's head, curious and genuine. Because you will rule sectors. You must understand economic systems. But Roy says, Patch started. The human janitor is not a qualified educator, Thorn interrupted. Roy looked up from his sewing. I did not claim to be. Then perhaps you should not fill their heads with simplistic ideas. What did I say that was simplistic? According to the hatchlings, you told them that fairness matters more than profit. It does. Thorn's crystalline form flickered with irritation. That is not how galactic economics work. Maybe that is the problem. For the next month it became a pattern. The tutors taught complex theories about governance, warfare, diplomacy, and resource management. The hatchlings listened politely, then asked Roy what he thought. Roy did not think his opinions mattered much, but he answered honestly. When they learned about military strategy, he said that preventing problems was smarter than fixing them after. When they studied diplomatic negotiations, he mentioned that keeping your word was more valuable than any contract. When they discussed resource distribution, he suggested that making sure everyone had enough was better than some having too much. The tutors hated it. Vornath received complaints daily. You are undermining their education, Vornath told Roy one evening. I am just answering questions. You are teaching them human values. I am teaching them to be decent. Is that a human thing? Vornath did not have an answer for that. The worst incident happened during a lesson on territorial expansion. The military instructor, Commander Drell, was explaining conquest strategies. When you encounter a weaker species on a desirable world, you have several options, Drell said. Forced relocation is standard. Subjugation is acceptable if they prove useful. Elimination is discouraged but sometimes necessary. Roy felt sick. The hatchlings looked confused. What if we just asked them to share? Goldie suggested, her thought voice small and uncertain. That is not how territorial acquisition works, Drell said. Why not? Red asked. Because they are weaker. They have no leverage. Roy says strong people do not hurt weak people, Patch said. He says that is called being a bully. The human janitor does not understand the realities of galactic politics. Roy stood up. All 5 hatchlings turned to look at him. Commander Drell is right, Roy said quietly. I do not understand galactic politics. I am just a farmer who cleans floors. But I understand one thing, and what is that? Drell asked with barely concealed contempt. Hurting people just because you can makes you wrong. Does not matter if it is on a farm or in a galaxy. Wrong is wrong. That is childishly naive. Maybe. But these are children, and I would rather they be naive and kind than smart and cruel. Drell left in anger. Roy expected to be fired. Instead, physician Rella came to see him. The tutors are threatening to resign, she said. Sorry. Do not be. Their teachings are technically correct but morally empty. Rella settled into a chair, her tentacles arranging themselves comfortably. The hatchlings are learning 2 educations. One from the tutors, one from you. Do you know which one will matter more? The tutors. They are the experts. No, Roy, yours will matter more. Because you are teaching them how to be people, not just rulers. That night, Roy sat with the hatchlings in their chamber. They were getting too big to all fit in his lap, but they tried anyway. Runt managed to get his head on Roy's knee. Red curled around his left side. Shimmer draped over his shoulders. Patch and Goldie pressed against his right side. I am not smart like your tutors, Roy said. I do not know about galactic politics or economics or military strategy. We know, Shimmer thought spoke. But you listen to me anyway. Why? Patch's voice entered his mind, clear and certain. Because you care about right and wrong. The tutors care about winning. You care about being good? Being good does not always win. Maybe, Red thought spoke. But we would rather lose while being good than win while being bad. Roy did not know if he had taught them that, or if they had figured it out themselves. Either way, he felt proud. "You will be better rulers than anyone expects," he said softly. "We will try," they answered together. Outside, the stars turned slowly past the window. Inside, 5 young dragons and 1 human janitor sat together in the quiet, and that was enough. 5 years was not a long time for a Draconis. For Roy Palmer, it was enough time to watch 5 baby dragons become 5 young adults the size of houses. It was enough time for his knees to hurt more, for his hair to turn gray at the temples, for his hands to develop arthritis that made mopping harder. It was enough time to know that everything good eventually ended. The juveniles were being assigned their sectors. Red would rule the Outer Rim territories. Shimmer would take the Science Collective worlds. Patch was given the trade routes. Goldie would oversee the agricultural systems. And Runt, despite being smallest, would govern the most important sector, the core worlds. They would leave in 2 weeks. Roy tried not to think about it. He focused on his work, teaching them the last practical things he knew. How to identify when systems were failing before alarms went off. How to listen to what people did not say. How to notice the small problems before they became disasters. Each of them had asked him privately to come with them. Each time Roy gave the same answer. "I cannot split myself 5 ways, and you need each other more than you need me." They did not understand. They had been raised together, but that was rare for Draconis royalty. Usually siblings were rivals. The tutors had been confused when these 5 showed no interest in competing with each other. "You taught them to be family," Rella had said. That is unprecedented. Roy had not taught them anything. They just were family, simple as that. The departure ceremony was in the Grand Hall, a space so large that adult Draconis could fly inside it. Dignitaries from every sector attended. Roy stood in the back in his formal robes, which he wore over his work jacket because the jacket felt like armor. The 5 juveniles stood on a raised platform. They were beautiful and terrifying. Scales gleaming, wings fully developed, eyes intelligent and ancient even though they were still young. Roy could hardly believe these were the same little creatures who used to sleep in his lap. Each one had to give a formal address, proving they were ready to rule. Red went first. His voice boomed through the hall, powerful and clear. "A ruler's first duty is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Power without care is tyranny. I will rule with strength, but I will remember that strength means standing between danger and the vulnerable, not standing above those who need help." The crowd murmured. That was not traditional Draconis philosophy. Shimmer spoke next. "Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. I will seek truth in all things, but I will never forget that being right does not matter if being right causes harm. I will question everything, even myself, especially myself." More murmurs. The scholars looked uncomfortable. Patch's voice was quieter but somehow more intense. "Strategy without compassion is cruelty. I will be clever, but I will not mistake cleverness for goodness. The best plan is the one that helps the most people, not the one that wins the most advantage." The military commanders shifted in their seats. Goldie spoke gently, but her words carried. "Strength is knowing when not to use power. The strongest choice is often the kindest choice. I will rule with my heart as well as my mind. Because people are not problems to be solved. They are lives to be valued." The crowd was silent now, listening intently. Runt spoke last. The smallest of the 5, but his voice filled the hall. The smallest voice often speaks the greatest truth. "I will listen to those who are ignored. I will see those who are overlooked. I will remember that I am not better than those I govern. I'm only luckier. And with that luck comes responsibility." The hall erupted in discussion. This was not how Royal Draconis spoke. This was not traditional. This was not proper, but it was wise. Even those who disagreed could not deny that. After the ceremony, Roy tried to slip away. He did not want to make the goodbye harder than it needed to be. But 5 massive dragons blocked his path. "Did you think you could leave without saying goodbye?" Red's thought voice held amusement and hurt. "I am not good at goodbyes." "Neither are we," Shimmer said. They gathered around him one last time. They were too big now for laps and hugs, but Runt lowered his head until it rested gently on Roy's shoulder. The others pressed close, forming a wall of scales and warmth around him. "You will be great rulers," Roy said, his voice rough. "Better than anyone expects." "Because of you," Patch said. "No, because of who you are." "Will you forget us?" Runt asked the same question from years ago. "Not possible. You are impossible to forget. Will you visit?" Goldie asked. If you want me to. Always, they said together. When they finally boarded their ships, Roy watched from an observation deck. 5 vessels, each one departing to a different sector, each one carrying a piece of his heart. Physician Rella found him there an hour later, still watching empty space. You have a communication, she said, handing him a datapad. It was from the Imperial Council, an official appointment. Cultural ambassador and advisor to the 5 sectors. His job was to travel between their territories, offering guidance and perspective, teaching others what he had taught the dragons. They are giving me a promotion for sitting with kids, Roy asked. You shaped 5 rulers. You changed the future of the galaxy. Rella's tentacles curled in what might have been a smile, and apparently you are still not impressed with yourself. I just did what anyone would do. No, Roy Palmer. You did what no one else thought to do. You cared. 10 years later, Roy's hair was white and his knees hurt all the time, but he still wore his work jacket. He traveled between the 5 sectors in a small ship with a crew of other humans who wanted to learn what he knew. He landed on Runt's world, now called Haven. It was the most prosperous core world, known for its fairness and compassion. Runt was enormous now, the size of a city building, magnificent and powerful. Hello, little Roy Palmer. Runt's thought voice rumbled through his mind, warm and familiar. Still not little, just older. To me, you will always be exactly the right size. They sat together in the maintenance bay of Runt's palace because Runt had insisted on having one. The other 4 visited often and they always met there. 5 massive dragons and 1 old human, talking about problems and solutions, about fairness and kindness, about being good instead of just being right. Roy looked at them and felt something he had not felt since losing his farm. He felt home. Never needed me at all, he said. You just needed someone to listen while you figured it out. Maybe, Runt said softly, but we are grateful you were the one listening. Outside, 2 galaxies lived under the rule of the 5, and they lived better than they had in centuries. Inside, a janitor who became something more sat with the dragons he helped raise, and everything was exactly as it should be.